Random House Audio presents W is for Wasted by Sue Grafton. This is Judy Kaye. Prologue. 2 dead men changed the course of my life that fall. One of them I knew, and the other I'd never laid eyes on until I saw him in the morgue. The first was Pete Walensky, an unscrupulous private detective I'd met years before through Birdshine Investigations, where I'd served my apprenticeship. I worked for Ben Bird and Morley Shine for 3 years, amassing the 6,000 hours I needed for my license. The two were old-school private eyes, hard-working, tireless, and inventive. While Ben and Morley did business with Pete on occasion, they didn't think much of him. He was morally shabby, disorganized, and irresponsible with money. In addition, he was constantly pestering them for work, since his marketing skills were minimal and his reputation too dubious to recommend him without an outside push. Birdshine might subcontract the odd stretch of surveillance to him or assign him a routine record search, but his name never appeared on a client report. This didn't prevent him from stopping by the office without invitation or dropping their names in casual conversations with attorneys, implying a close professional relationship. Pete was a man who cut corners, and he assumed his colleagues did likewise. More problematic was the fact that he'd rationalized his bad behavior for so long it had become standard operating procedure. Pete Walensky was gunned down the night of August 25th on a dark stretch of pavement just off the parking lot at the Santa Teresa bird refuge. The site was right across the street from the Caliente Cafe, a popular hangout for off-duty cops. It might seem odd that no one in the bar was aware that shots were fired, but the volume on the jukebox exceeds 117 decibels, roughly the equivalent of a gas-powered chainsaw at a distance of 3 feet. The rare moments of quiet are masked by the high-pitched rattle of ice cubes in dueling blenders, where margaritas are whipped up at a rate of 1 every 4.5 minutes. Pete's body might not have been discovered until daylight if it hadn't been for an inebriated bar patron who stepped into the shadows to take a leak. I heard about Pete's death on the morning news while I was eating my Cheerios. The TV set was on in the living room behind me, more for the company than the content. I caught his name and turned to catch a night shot of the crime scene blocked off by yellow tape. By the time the news crew had arrived, his body had been loaded into the ambulance in preparation for transport to the coroner's office, so there was really nothing to see. In the harsh glare of artificial light, a somber female reporter recited the bare facts. Pete's immediate family must have been notified by then, or she wouldn't have mentioned him by name. Pete's death was a surprise, but I can't say it was a shock. He'd often complained of sleeping poorly and had taken to wandering the streets at all hours. According to the reporter, his wallet had been stolen along with his watch, a knockoff Rolex with a faux platinum band. I guess robbers these days can't distinguish the genuine article from the fake, which meant that Pete's death wound up being more about impulse or cheap thrills than profit. He was a man with a propensity for risk, and it was only a matter of time before Lady Luck caught up with him and pushed him off the cliff. The story about the second dead man is more complex and takes longer to articulate, especially since the facts emerged slowly over a matter of weeks. The coroner's office called me on a Friday afternoon, asking if I could ID a John Doe who had my name and phone number on a slip of paper in his pocket. How could I resist? Every good mystery takes place on 3 planes: what really happened, what appears to have happened, and how the sleuth, amateur or professional, yours truly in this case, figures out which is which. I suppose I could put everything in perspective if I explained how it all turned out and then doubled back to that phone call. But it's better if you experience it just as I did, one strange step at a time. This was October 7th, 1988, and it looked like things were as bad as they were going to get. On the national front, congressional spending was a whopping $1,064.14 billion, and the federal debt was topping out at $2,601.3 billion. Unemployment hovered at 5.5%, and the price of a first-class postage stamp had jumped from 22 cents to 25. I tend to disregard issues over which I have no control. Like it or not, the politicians don't consult me about economic policies, budget cuts, or the gross national product, whatever that is. I might voice an opinion, if I had one, but as nearly as I can tell, nobody pays the slightest attention, so what's the point? My only hope is to be the master of my own small universe, which is centered in a Southern California town 96 miles north of Los Angeles. My name is Kinsey Millhone. I'm a private investigator, female, age 38. I rent office space in a 2-room bungalow with a kitchenette and a bathroom on a narrow side street in the heart of Santa Teresa, population 85,810, minus the 2 dead guys. Since I'm the sole proprietor and lone employee, I operate on a modest scale, supporting myself by doing missing persons searches, background checks, witness location, and the occasional service of process. From time to time, I'm hired to establish paper trails in legal, financial, or property disputes. On a more personal note, let me say that I believe in law and order, loyalty, and patriotism, old-fashioned values that might seem woefully out of date. I also believe in earning an honest living so I can pay my taxes, cover my monthly bills, and tuck any surplus into my retirement account. When I reached the coroner's office, I was ushered into a bay with the curtain discreetly pulled around the ceiling track. Though curious, I wasn't apprehensive. I'd done a quick survey and could account for the people I knew and loved. There were those who orbited my world in a wider gyre, but I couldn't think of one whose death would have had a significant impact. The dead man was stretched out on a gurney with a sheet pulled up to his chin, so there was nothing of an intimate nature in evidence. He was not someone I recognized. His skin tones were gray, underlined with a pale gold that suggested liver issues of a profound and possibly fatal nature. His features had been softened and flattened in death, angles worn as smooth as stone over which water has poured for thousands of years. The human spirit does more than animate the face. It lends character and definition. Here, there was none. The decedent, to use the official term, appeared to be in his early 70s, white and overweight in the manner of those who forego their 9 servings of fresh fruits and vegetables per day. Judging by the bulbous nose and broken veins across his weather-darkened face, he'd enjoyed alcohol in sufficient quantities to pickle the average adult. Sometimes the dead seemed to sleep. This man did not. I studied him at length, and there was not even the faintest suggestion that he was breathing. Whatever spell had been cast over him, the effects were permanent. His body had been discovered that morning in a sleeping bag on the beach, where he'd hollowed out a place for himself in the sand. His campsite was just below a bank of ice plant that flourished between the bike path and the beach itself, a spot not immediately visible to the passers-by. During the day, the area is popular with the homeless. At night, the fortunate among them secure bed space at one of the local shelters. The unlucky ones are left to flop where they can. The beachside park closes 30 minutes after sunset, and it doesn't open again until 6 a.m. According to Municipal Code 15.16.085, it's unlawful to sleep in any public park, public street, public parking lot, or any public beach, which doesn't leave much in the way of open-air habitats available free of charge. The ordinance is designed to discourage transients from sacking out on the doorsteps of area businesses, thus forcing them to set up makeshift quarters under bridges, freeway overpasses, bushes.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?